Hello, BookTube. Well, I come to you at the end of a dark and stormy day here in Boston. Rain and record seas, all driven by this big nor'easter that has parked itself directly off the coast of Boston and isn't moving anywhere. It's blanketed large parts of Pennsylvania and Washington and New York with snow and sleet. And it's nighttime now here. We have not lost electricity. And it has not been plungingly cold here. It hasn't snowed. And I'm wondering if that's going to happen. But Boston has had major flooding. I have seen the video footage, and it's incredible. When that was going on, of course, I was having a little battle of my own with a very strong-willed little schnauzer who doesn't like going out in the rain. But while it was going on, I was just assuming, in the back of my mind, I was just assuming, I was ratcheting downward any likelihood that I would get any more mail today. And yet, mail came. Huh. God bless my mail truck driver. He just sticks at his job. So I have more mail to show you, which is great. I'm mail to show you in the midst of a record-breaking nor'easter. So let's see what this first one is here. Those of you sharp-eyed viewers of mine will be able to see a difference in this video right away. The ramparts are gone. And the reason for that is because there were, in addition to all the stuff that we've been seeing and opening together, there were also two enormous mail hauls that I didn't film. And by the time it was all over on Thursday night, the ramparts were taller than I've ever seen them. I added a wooden crate in addition to the platform that I already have here next to my nightstand. And the books were piled up high, 3 towers in a row. And I was starting to worry that they were just unstable, that they would fall over, either in this direction on me or in that direction on Frida when she's down on her pillows and blankets. She's not there very often, but I didn't want to have to think about that. So for the first time so far in 2018, I had to break up the ramparts and assemble them to their various locations before the week was over. Incredible. And I hope not a harbinger of things to come, because if that's true, I might be getting too many books in the mail. But for right now, we'll just move on. So I'm gonna start the ramparts again. I'm confident. I'm hoping. I mean, right now it's Friday night. That means this is the last mail haul of today, meaning there's Saturday, a maximum of 3 mail deliveries, and then that's it. So I'm really hoping that just one column further will settle things for this week. Well, let's see. What have we got here? Oh, okay, great. This is due any day. This is the finished copy of a book I read and kind of liked. This is Joyce Tilsley's Nefertiti's Face, The Creation of an Icon, which is all about this incredible little sculpture that is probably Nefertiti, and that looks to us from the gap of thousands of years, an iconic figure, one of the rare iconic figures for whom we have a probably relatively accurate mask, a relatively accurate likeness. Imagine if we had that for, well, you name it. There are so many pivotal historical figures for whom we have no reliable likeness at all. Just visual iconography long after the fact. You'll remember that since Nefertiti's sculpture is in a museum in Berlin, that BookTube collectively deputized Steve Partridge to go to that museum, look at the mask, and take a picture with it. And maybe even do a little vlogging if the museum allows it, but certainly a picture on Facebook or on Twitter. And you'll all remember how faithfully he did that. He, in fact, didn't do that at all. Instead, he preferred to sit on what the British refer to as his arse. So now he has a second chance to put on his hipster hat and go to the museum and take a picture with Nefertiti. Maybe he'll do it, or maybe he won't. If he does it, it's because he values the civic endeavor of museums just in general. And if he doesn't do it, it's because he hates every single one of you individually. Let's see here. What's this next one? Another finished copy, by the feel of it. Oh my. Okay. Okay, it doesn't come with a pub sheet, but it doesn't really need one. This is the Christine Feehan Covert Game. This is a Ghostwalkers novel. He looks decidedly unhappy. But that's the men in these urban quasi-supernatural romance series. That's what they are just in general. They're not the Mr. Darcy type, where they're brooding until the unexpected fortune of marriage allows them to be happy. Now, they're just generally unhappy. But what have we got in this case? Rescuing an industrial spy from the hands of a criminal mastermind is a suicide mission for the Ghostwalkers. And there's no one more up to the task than Gino Mazza. In other words, there's no one more suicidal. He's the perfect killing machine, a man driven by demons so dark and destructive that his blighted soul has given up on trying to find solace. But his laser-sharp focus on this target has transformed to something nearing desire. A treasonous senator dangled top-secret Ghostwalker data in front of a Chinese crime lord, and he bit. Zara Hightower, one of the world's leading experts on artificial intelligence, was sent in to psychically wipe the crime lord's computer network. She succeeded, but at huge cost. Now she's the captive of a man who has descended into paranoid madness. Torture and death await her. But Ghostwalkers never leave one of their own in enemy territory, and it's up to Gino to save Zara or kill her if it turns out she's led them into a trap. Either way, heaven and hell won't stop him. And when it comes to Ghostwalker novels, and there are a couple of other series like this, they're very addictive because they allow romance authors to demonstrate that they can do action sequences. Which, if I were a man writing novels in the Clive Cussler frame, where the romance element in those novels is legendarily horrible, ham-handed, and moronic, and you're sort of selling your whole existence as an author on your skill at constructing action sequences. If I were an author such as that, and I started seeing authors like Christine Feehan knock these things out of the park, I'd be a little worried. But the key thing with Ghostwalker, Ghostwalkers is just one of them. There are biker gangs, there are Viking gangs, the supernatural vampire novels. Oh my God, they are J.R. Ward's Carpathian novels are the worst or the best, depending on how you look at it. When it comes to this, when a novel like this and that premise that we just read, where the hero has to either save her or kill her, I guarantee you that will be his come-on line. And it will stay that way. Even once they know they sort of like each other, he'll still remind her periodically, probably in every chapter, that he may have to snap her neck someday. It's just, there's no happy wedding at Longbourn in these books. Well, that's just why I love them. Let's see here. This is the next one. Also feels like a finished copy. Oh my, okay, it is a finished copy. Very good. Okay, we've actually seen this on this channel before. Very nice. This is a great big new biography of Zbigniew Brzezinski, a foreign policy poobah who had an official position in the Johnson White House and a much more powerful official position in the Carter White House. And you might think, if you hear that, well, okay, Johnson's foreign policy, the very worst reputation that anyone's foreign policy could ever have, and Carter has entered into 21st century history as sort of this ineffectual one-term president. And you might, if you just heard that and you didn't know anything about Brzezinski, you might link those two things together and think, well, couldn't have been much of a poobah. But he cast a long shadow. He had a long reach on foreign policy thinking for the better part of 4 decades. And the reason why was a really good one. It wasn't the counterpart. There are 2 people that always come up when you bring up Brzezinski. One is George Kennan, but much more importantly, the other one is Henry Kissinger. And with Kennan had one lucky guess and built an entire career on that one lucky guess. But Kissinger was a fraud from the start. Just a blundering, reactionary, I won't even say thinker, reactor, just a blunt, exposed funny bone that just and the thing that sold him was his accent. The thing that sold him was his affect. That you've got it's this unicorn that's a certain circle of American politicians especially always are enamored of, which is this heavily accented foreigner who brings a kind of gravitas and realpolitik to the table, where you get even seasoned American politicians who know enough to know that in the history of the 20th century, no one was more realpolitik than the Americans. There wasn't a back we didn't stab. We in the 20th century we refined realpolitik to nuclear levels, and there wasn't a seasoned politician who didn't know that, and yet they still fall for it. A lot of them still fall for that. If you look at the sort of informal power cabinet behind any president, you'll almost always find one of these people. And the key difference between someone like Kissinger and I could name the earlier ones. FDR had one, and so did Wilson. But the key difference between Brzezinski and those figures is that he was the real deal. And that's why he stayed on the short list of people from whom you will take a phone call at any time for a large number of politicians, right and left, Republican and Democrat. Because when you got him in a room and you said, what do you think about what's going on in Aleppo, what you would hear was almost always something you could use. And not use in the Kissinger sense of, a bludgeon, but rather, okay, that's really good. That's really good. Not good in the virtuous sense, but that is really useful. That kind of thing, when you're the guy in the room who's reliably producing that, word spreads, and that attaches to your name. And it keeps you getting called. Brent Scowcroft the same way. And it was the same time period. The author captures that. This is a wonderful biography. It's going to be a tough sell. It's expensive, I think. It's $35, and it's a shadowy power brokering cabinet figure, an eminence grise that 9 out of 10 Americans couldn't name. If they recognized verbally the last name, it wouldn't be for him; it would be for his daughter. But it's going to be a tough sell to sell this. You'll sell it to political junkies, and you'll sell it to political readers of a certain age who remember the world that Brzezinski shaped. So I think it's kind of gutsy on the part of Harvard University Press to publish this, and it underscores a point I've made on this channel many times before, which is that the Republic of Letters would be incredibly impoverished if it weren't for academic presses using endowments to publish the books that historians need. Not only to maintain their own careers, but also to conduct their own work. I highly recommend it if it's your cup of tea. And that's twice now that I've recommended it on this channel, because I did it for my March TBR BY. Let's see what we have here. Certainly not lacking for variety, but then we never do on this channel, do we? So, let's see. Oh, you're kidding me. Oh my. Okay. I don't know if I've recommended this book on this channel before. Talk about variety. This comes out a little bit later in the month. Comes out as a paperback, so ordinarily I have a little bit of hesitation recommending things that are new to the rest of you because they're so expensive, but paperback is at least a little less expensive. I wonder if I have a description of this. This is a book that, well, anyway, let me tell you about it. It's called The Diamond Setter by Moshe Sakal. Look at that cover. Incredible. Let me read you what they give me here. The uneventful life of a jeweler from Tel Aviv changes abruptly after Farid, a handsome young man from Damascus, crosses illegally into Israel and makes his way to the ancient port of Jaffa in search of his roots. In his pocket is a piece of a famous blue diamond known as the Sabak. Intending to return the diamond to its rightful owner, Farid is soon swept up in Tel Aviv's vibrant gay scene and a turbulent protest movement. He falls in love with an Israeli soldier and his boyfriend, the narrator of this book. We learn the true story of his family's past, the tale of forbidden love beginning in the 1930s, and what connects Fareed to the jeweler. And the author he's the author of 5 Hebrew novels, including a bestseller called Yolanda, and he lives in Jaffa. And, okay, all right, let me try and control myself here. Some of you may have heard rants of mine. I have occasionally gotten guff from some of you, but about some of my side comments on contemporary gay fiction. And I'll cop to that, because a lot of it strikes me as so ridiculous, so cartoonishly overblown, so RuPaul's Drag Race, that I read these books and I think, okay, well, as a novel, that was a complete failure. And as a reflection of gay life in the 21st century, you just brought us back to about the late 18th century. And I am mystified when these books get approval from prominent gay critics and some prominent gay booktubers. I am mystified when people hold up Garth Greenwell or The End of Eddie and say, well, this was just a searching, searingly honest portrayal of gay life. Oh my God. When they are juvenile books written in primary colors in crayon about silly little things. They don't go anywhere near addressing even the complexity of gay life that the reviewers themselves experience in their daily life. This is not one of those books. This is exactly the sort of thing, exactly the sort of book you might expect would push all of my rant buttons in the opposite direction. The multicultural pandering, for instance, or the stilted, morose portrayal of gay existence, for instance. But I've read this, and it doesn't do any of that. It's incredibly intelligent. I highly recommend it. If you read gay fiction, this, I think, is a slight indicator. I've wondered in the past many times what gay fiction is in the 21st century. The 21st century has become this massive dichotomy of gay life. On the one hand, waves of greater social acceptance in the enlightened West than ever before in history. Nationwide movements to legalize marriage, to broaden legal rights and adoption rights and parental rights and property owning rights. And on the other hand, an increase in the tempo of anti-gay oppression elsewhere in the world, with state-sanctioned gay bashing in Russia, which is has a seat at the councils of all the UN. Massive amounts of homophobic backlash all over the Pacific Rim, all over Asia. Needless to say, gay people being thrown off buildings in radical held sections of the Middle East, but with large sections of the rest of the world looking on that and saying, well, maybe they had it coming. So the 21st century is seeing this huge divide in what gay life means, and gay literature of the 21st century is failing that completely in a way that the gay literature of the 80s and early 90s, faced with a plague, faced with the literal end of the world, did not fail. Massively powerful works came out of that time period and did it justice. And I'm looking around for the gay literature of this time, of this bewildering. This is a bewildering time to be gay. Imagine if you were 16 and you knew perfectly well that you had romantic erotic attractions for members of your own gender instead of the opposite gender. Imagine what you would think if you had an iPhone that could give you news from all over the world, where you knew that across the border in the next state, you'd be run out of your school, but in your school, there are 6 different clubs, and your coming out will be welcome. No one knows. No, it's a fascinating moment and a complicated one. And in my opinion, gay fiction is letting the moment down. And this doesn't. This has all the trappings on the surface of being just, box checking, but it's not. So I highly recommend it. That's why that was a long digression. But just because the subject is near and dear to my heart. I mean, the gay life in the modern era in the West was characterized by catastrophe, by plague that seemed to be singling out one group of people. And for a while there, some of you may be old enough to remember, some of you may even have been involved. For a while there, it looked like it was going to succeed. For a while there, it looked like everyone was infected. So, and now, well, anyway, it's a long form version of saying that I recommend this far more than I would recommend some of the gay fiction that has won every award in the world lately. So, okay, all right. Good. We'll finally move on from that book. Sorry for the 10-minute digression. This is a finished copy of something I think we've seen on this channel before. This comes out later in the month. This is by Iggy Azalea, and it is Disarmed. It's the memoir of the author who was a sniper who lost an arm in the war. Actually, it would have been a while ago that I read anything about this, so let me read it to you again. In 2009, the author, an American who had enlisted in the Israeli Defense Force at 19, lost his arm in a mortar attack on the border of the Gaza Strip. In this stirring and wryly humorous memoir, he recounts his torturous trek through rehabilitation to re-enlistment as a squad commander in the IDF. He became the world's only one-armed Special Forces sharpshooter. This isn't a typical war chronicle, full of macho bluster and the usual hero tropes. Izzy wrote this book with his fellow millennials in mind. Not necessarily those with military ambitions, but everyone facing life's daily battles. His message is universal. If a self-described nerd and one-armed basket case like him can accomplish what he set his mind to, then anyone can become a hero in his or her own life. And if you recall, I've read the book. Since the time when I got the advanced copy, I've read the book, and the rehab parts are great. Just great. But if you recall, the ambiguity that I had at the time that we first saw this arose from the tone of that jacket copy, and it turns out that tone is partially reflected in the book itself. That part with his message is universal. If a self-described nerd and one-armed basket case like him can accomplish what he set his mind to, then anyone can become a hero in his or her own life. And the thing that cover copy loses sight of is also occasionally from my mind, lost sight of in the book itself, which is that the thing that he set his mind to do was recover enough to go back in the field and shoot people in the head. People who don't know he's there, people who aren't charging him, people who are no immediate threat to anyone, people he's been told to shoot in the head. And that kind of darkens the universal message of, that I can do it, you can too, because it removes a key element of importance about what it is that you've set your mind to do, that I thought was kind of dangerous. I don't want a book like this to do that. I don't want a book like this to say, no matter what you want to get yourself back in a position to do, you go. Anyway, because I had such a complicated reaction the first time I read it, I'm glad to have a finished copy because I will read it again. That's exactly why I love getting 2 copies of a book. And then we'll finish this extremely contentious follow-up with 2 boxes. And maybe they'll both be sweetness and light, so that we'll end on a happy note. What is this this first one? Do we have a sheet here? Okay, this is a paperback called The Treasures of Alexander the Great, How One Man's Wealth Shaped the World by Frank Holt. This is probably out already. Yeah, it's out already. No conqueror ever captured more people or property in so short a lifetime. than Alexander the Great in the late 4th century BC. Notably, his conquest of the Persian Empire resulted in the acquisition of vast quantities of treasure and resources. While the invasion was savage, it has generally been heralded as a positive economic event for all concerned. Oh my, we're not doing well. The author tests this assumption in The Treasures of Alexander the Great, a long overdue and accessible account of Alexander's wealth and its enormous impact on the ancient world. Holt investigates the kinds and quantities of treasure seized by the Macedonian conqueror. He explains what became of it and what Alexander's treatment of his wealth reveals about his personality and his politics. Okay, it saved itself. That does sound interesting. And some of the treasures of Alexander the Great have not been found. And if they were to be found, well, there are people in the world who would want to find them because their wealth would be staggering, especially in the land that was known to Alexander as Bactria, where he heard rumors all the time about vast treasure hoards, and he only found one. But he heard rumors of others, and those rumors were right, because there were trade routes that were open to banditry all the time, and the men who ran the banditry were like dragons. They didn't spend their money. They hoarded it. And unfortunately, to a lot of people today, and somebody finding one of those treasure troves, they could be found. They do still exist. They're in mountain strongholds that have been walled off by tectonic activity and landslides and whatnot. But if you knew what to search for and where to search, you could find them. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the world who would look at them only because you would break open a wall of rock and encounter a cavern the size of a modern suburban duplex entirely full of gold. And you would think, okay, well, this is more money than anyone's ever had, and according to international salvage right, it's all mine. The key thing that people who aren't like that are thinking is that if you found such a thing with coinage from 10 different realms, with who knows what else, or who knows what in the way of records, written records, what a treasure that would be in the real sense of the word. But I don't recall this book. I don't recall this book when it first came out. Do I? I don't recall ever reading this. It came out in 2016. This is the Oxford paperback of The Treasures of Alexander. Huh. Okay, that's a little bit of an indictment. And then this last one. We'll do this last one here. Oh my God, this video has gone so long, all because of that gay digression. That was terrible on my part. Sorry about that. Oh, this last one's a penguin. Oh. Okay. All right. This is an original Penguin anthology, which they don't do enough of, from my mind. They're mainly reprints. This is On Writing History, from Herodotus to Herodian. There's a big volume about writing ancient history. What is history, and how should it be written? How does it differ from other forms of writing? What responsibility does the historian bear? This new anthology of writings from the ancient world, when the study of history was just beginning, explores these questions and many more. It ranges from longer pieces, such as the complete essays on Thucydides by Diana. Oh my God! This is all translations? On the Malice of Herodotus by Plutarch? The witty How to Write History by Lucian, my favorite. Lucian is in here, oh my God! The dialogues of Lucian are so much fun, but he's not known. He's not known. And key shorter writings by Polybius, Cicero, Xenophon, and Pliny the Younger. Oh my God. Brought together here in fresh new translations. Oh my God. Talk about ending on a positive note. This is incredible. This is incredible. It starts off with Herodotus and just goes straight through. This is an anthology of the writings about history of ancient historians who knew perfectly well the youth of their genre and often turned their pen to writing about what they were doing. And it's all collected in here in one volume. Oh my God. All right. Okay. All right. Let's wrap this up. We have Disarmed. We have Zbigniew Brzezinski, big new biography. We have Covert Game by Christine Feehan, which you might end up loving, but if you don't, I'll have to kill you. I might have to kill you anyway. Then we have Nefertiti's Face, a book about the statue that Steve Partridge is going to take a selfie of himself with as soon as he sees this video. Then we have The Diamond Setter, a novel about gay love in Jaffa. Then we have The Treasures of Alexander the Great. And finally, On Writing History from Penguin Classics. Oh my. All right, so plenty of Steve Channel variety and lots of stuff that I want to go explore right now. So I'm going to wrap up this hideously long video, and I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.